And now, please join me in welcoming the wonderful panel for Omnichannel Strategy in a Fragmented World. Let's give them a round of applause.
Come on up, guys. Hi, everyone. My name is Mike Bevans. I'm the Global VP of Solutions and Marketing for Xaxis, and I'll be the moderator tonight. We'll have each of the panels, or today, I'll have each of the, I live in London, so I'm a little off in terms of I'm from London. I'll have each of the panelists introduce themselves. But basically in this session, what we're going to be talking about is, how as a marketer do we deal with video strategy, given it's very fragmented from a user perspective, but less so, more so from our perspective in terms of walled gardens, how do you do cross-device, et cetera. So this session will try to understand Omnichannel and some strategies and how you would address it. But before we start, how many people actually know the difference between Omnichannel and multi-channel video strategies? Excellent. You are in the right session then. Okay. All right. So to get started, we'll have each of the panelists introduce themselves.
None of us raised our hands, though, I would say, so hopefully we have the answer.
Okay, the people that didn't raise their hand. Okay. Kathleen?
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Kathleen Comer. I'm Vice President of Client Services at The Trade Desk. We are a global demand-side platform focusing on building the best-in-breed buy-side technology for programmatic media buyers.
Great. My name is James McNamara. I'm SVP of Client Strategy, oversee all Nielsen non-CPG advertisers and basically anyone that's invested in Nielsen's next-gen Nielsen Marketing Cloud that kind of aims for the promise of helping advertisers plan in an omni-channel moving world and then measure outcomes out of it.
I'm Stephanie Lackey. I work at MediaCom. What we do is media planning and buying across lots of different clients and accounts. We strive for, connecting content and media strategies. So talking more about, how to bring omni-channel strategies to life.
I'm Seth Walters, VP of Demand Partnerships at Roku. My responsibility at the company is to help us monetize our viewership outside of a direct sale to agencies and advertisers, and that's through partnerships with data providers, DSPs, publishers, et cetera, focused on how to better reach consumers and monetize their audience in the living room.
Excellent, excellent. So I heard Omnichannel about 4 or 5 times there, and most of the people said they weren't really sure what it was. So why don't we just start there? What is Omnichannel, and how does it differ from multi-channel strategies? So anyone want to take that?
Sure. How we think of omni-channel strategy is ensuring that all of your channels are working together as well as saying the same story. So the message is also connected with the channels. I think it's also really important that you're measuring how all of the channels work together and not in separate silos, where a multi-channel strategy is building a strategy for each channel individually and measuring those channels individually.
Okay.
So we say that we're an omni-channel platform, meaning that we support multiple channels of buying. So we support desktop display buying, native, audio, connected TV, and of course, video. Mm-hmm. But we've seen huge client appetite for multiple channel, omni-channel type strategies where, we know that audiences are screen agnostic. And any smart marketer needs to make sure that they're talking to consumers across all the different screens that they're using. So we saw over 150% growth year on year in terms of the number of customers that were adopting multiple channels in our platform from Q1 this year to Q1 last year. And I just think that speaks volumes to the fact that the industry is changing and marketers are adapting to the fact that they need to be taking advantage of multiple channels.
So just if I can dig into that, so we're talking about the difference between omni-channel and kind of a multi-channel strategy. Are the brands actually thinking of it from an omni-channel perspective, or is it still very siloed, or are you seeing a bit of both, and are you trying to move them towards omni-channel?
Yeah, we continue to push our clients towards more of an omni-channel strategy. Is it happening perfectly? Maybe not. But I think if we keep digging and keep trying to get all of your channels connected and telling the same story, I think we can get there. But there are some limitations to that. You know, is it connecting TV to online video, to print, to out of home? So I think there are some dynamics and struggles in how to measure all of those things and how the consumer's journey is interacting through all of those things. But I think we'll get there if we keep pushing to have clients come along with us.
Okay.
Yeah, and what I'm seeing, and we talk with, my teams talk with advertisers and their agencies, it's the conversation when it gets elevated to the brand level,
Yep.
the person who's like, listen, I need to know my consumer and how many of those consumers are gonna buy my product. They think about the world in an omnichannel world in that they just start with the pure knowledge of, okay, I've got to sell to my consumer. And I want to create the best experience for that consumer. Because then they start thinking about, okay, if I start with the consumer first, then the media teams, the marketing teams, the trade teams, my website team, they need to start executing against this single notion of who is my consumer.
Yep.
And then they try to, it is logistically very hard. But I'm seeing brands push and agencies push to elevate the conversation with the brand team directly. Because then it gets out of the siloed of a multi-channel approach into, let's just think about the audience and that experience.
Okay. Do you run into challenges then when you start to, so from a theory perspective, it makes sense, but then from an execution perspective, maybe what are some of the bigger challenges that you guys see as you're trying to look at these strategies?
Yeah, well, I mean, what I was going to say was what it came to mind, because it's something we had to overcome, is in some of these two clients where their conversation got elevated to the brand team.
Right.
Their report card to the brand team for their working media was all about clicks.
Right.
And they were like, they saw just these massive clicks, massive impressions, and they're like, I know there's 16 million people in the U.S. I need to sell to.
Yeah.
So I can't make sense of these numbers. And so it kind of comes down to some of what and at Nielsen, what we're trying to do is like, what's the metrics to monetize? Whether you're a publisher and you're trying to monetize your business, or you're a brand and you're trying to monetize your business, let's get to the metrics that make sense.
Right.
So we had to it wasn't just a click or a device, but we had to translate it using some data science into like, how many homes, how many real people did you reach? And that way we could transcend the conversation. But that's just one of the logistical barriers to elevate the conversation.
Yep.
And sometimes I think there can be some organizational challenges too, where, either at the brand level, sometimes at the agency level, there are teams that work on one channel and teams that work on another channel. And to Stephanie's point, I think this is definitely improving, and there's a lot of effort behind trying to sync up those different teams. But to add to what you're saying, sometimes that becomes difficult because different teams are measuring to different types of KPIs.
Yep.
And ultimately, we just want to help a marketer sell their product. So trying to think of more appropriate KPIs to use across the broader spectrum.
Yeah, chiming in, I'd say that's probably one of the things that we see or notice the most as advertisers and agencies look to include OTT into their overall omni-channel approach. And probably the most commonly uttered phrase when talking about connected television is that it has the power of TV with the benefits of digital. But when you approach media planning and channel selection through that mindset, you tend to go down a path that's very much direct response driven, and looking at things like clicks, which don't really make sense, or looking at persons level data and trying to compare it to television. Essentially, OTT is television, it's a shared device, it's a household level reach. And then conversely, trying to over-architect your targeting, your engagement approach on OTT, you kind of miss out on some of the power of television aspects of things. So in particular, when advertisers are faced with falling ratings, decreased reach in linear television, it's a shame that they don't look to OTT, which is growing rapidly, particularly ad-supported viewership on OTT, as a means to recapture some of that audience. But then also take the exhaust of that ad exposure along with things like smart TV, ACR, or content recognition software. Roku is a great example of a platform that has both smart TV ACR data along with great rich OTT data tied to our user registration information. And be able to use that in a multifaceted way where we're trying to recapture reach for TV planners and then also hold it accountable and do attribution associated with a broader omnichannel approach through digital and retargeting and sequencing of messages and so forth.
Okay.
I'll add to that. We on the measurement part, we've been seeing a lot of our clients migrating to more offline measurement type metrics. Yeah. Where I can think of one luxury auto dealer who has migrated from a cost per action on the website, so like a find a dealer, to an actual cost per dealership visit, which is so much more of a stronger signal for someone actually buying a car and driving off the lot, which is great. And that means such great things for our entire industry when we can prove that we're helping marketers actually move product.
Makes sense. And I want to come back to KPIs and actually outcomes and try and get an understanding of where marketers are in terms of understanding some of those metrics that actually drive the business. But before I get there, I'd love to get a sense for, there's so many different screens and so many different devices. Is there a formula or a strategy that you would use for a specific vertical when you're talking to clients in terms of how to actually take advantage of omni-channel video strategies, or is it just too much of the genesis at this point?
Yeah, so on one of the accounts that we've been working on out MediaCom in Chicago office, we've been developing a full video strategy, including TV, online video, which is pre-roll, it's OTT, it's YouTube, it's bumper ads, you name it. We're trying to build that into our video plan. So taking this client through this journey of, it's not just TV over here, online videos here, social videos here. It's actually, they're all working together. All the content's telling a similar story. And so we've been building a strategy around all of these different formats and platforms and making them all work together.
Yeah, I'm a little biased, obviously, being at Roku and sort of recognizing the strength and power of OTT as part of that sort of channel selection. The great thing that I'm hearing from Stephanie is that it's important to understand how they work together. And I think that's part of the pitfalls of the approach of trying to reach the right audience regardless of screen, because there is a different, every impression isn't equal. And there is, for planning teams and buying teams, there's a need to understand the interoperability between channel and understanding the impact of exposure on OTT, which is a full screen, non-skippable, premium lean-in environment with the benefit of co-viewership and how that plays out in terms of sequencing into mobile desktop to drive action. And I think it's on planning teams and buying teams to understand through A/B testing and creating specific cohorts of different segments that have exposure to video, to mobile, to et cetera, to understand specifically the value of each one of those exposures.
Yeah.
We released a planning tool this past summer as part of our next wave release, and that's been really helpful in terms of using some seed data, so sometimes first-party data, sometimes an offline conversion, and then having our planner help to, one, identify who is your audience, two, where are they in terms of which channels, and then three, help allocate spend to each channel.
It's a good point. And so Nielsen, I believe, just did a study earlier in the year. Does anyone know what the average time an adult in the U.S. spends watching video across all the different screens in a day? Any guess? 112 hours. Not sure about that math, but anyone else? 6 hours, exactly. 6 hours. So The average adult spends 6 hours. So clearly the video is at the center. Now the question is, and if I think about myself and my daughter, who is 17, what we actually, our viewing habits are very different, right? So I'll actually turn the TV on in the morning and watch the news while I'm getting ready for work. TV, like linear TV, is not something she even engages with. So, so is there, when you talked about audiences and you know, helping brands, how do we go about doing that for them to say, hey, here's how your target audience is actually engaging with these different formats?
I would say it from the Nielsen angle, and we sit in, you know, between the marketer and
Yep.
you know, buy side and the sell side, and in that kind of question, the single biggest kind of request that we're lighting up for the industry is like, show me that it's incremental reach by an audience. You know, show me that the combination of linear plus OTT gets me a slightly different audience, depending on, you know, as a brand, who you're going after.
Right.
And that's why your earlier question, is there one playbook of what you would suggest? It really, you know, the brand may be going to a consumer that's heavy OTT, might be going after a type of consumer that's heavy linear, might be going after a consumer that's a little bit of a hybrid, depending, and even like day parts come into play. So, you know, that's what we get asked. It's like, how do we, you know, take all of the data signals out there, take our panel, and mirror the two so that they answer the question that something like linear and OTT gets you incremental reach as a brand.
Okay.
Yeah, we actually did a series of studies with Nielsen to answer that very question, because our clients have asked us the same. You know, why should I be investing in CTV? I get people are watching it, but prove to me that there's incrementality. And so across a series of studies that we did with these guys, we found that 40% of the audience that we were running was unique to connected TV, meaning that they could not have been found on linear TV. So to your point earlier about your daughter, she's not to be found watching broadcast television. Yeah, I thought that was a remarkable stat, and really interesting from the perspective of thinking about how much incremental reach you can get with connected TV, and frankly where the audience is.
Yeah, I mean, it's not surprising. We're 22 million households today, active households. That means they stream their Rokus at least once per month. And about half of those households, more than half of those households, are non-traditional pay TV customers. They're cord cutters, cord shavers. They stream using virtual MVPDs, et cetera. So one of the things that we've created, we call it our Roku Reach Insights, is we look across the full universe of Roku. So that's the Roku smart TVs, the streaming players, and we detect ad exposures from a traditional linear television campaign across the TV universe. We extrapolate that out to the full footprint, and we understand the ad exposure that comes from a dedicated campaign across Roku, any other OTT campaigns that would be direct with a publisher or a platform like The Trade Desk, and then also mobile and desktop as well, to quantify how many people were exposed across linear television, how many were exposed across OTT uniquely, and then other channels, and of course the frequency in between. And it's not really surprising that like OTT contributes to a unique audience that's unable to be reached elsewhere, and then it also is able to reach audiences that have a lighter linear TV exposure and digital exposure. So it really is a powerful tool. And the really crucial thing is when you start looking at more advanced audience profiles and understanding the behaviors from that exposure and how responsive audiences are and engaged that they are across each of the different channels, driving to things like dealer visits or site visits or actual sales.
CTV is a pretty compelling tactic. It's a forced view, which you can't even guarantee that on TV these days. Yeah. So we see it as a pretty important tactic. On some of the campaigns that I've been working on recently, seeing brand lifts higher on CTV than just regular pre-roll. So we see it as an impactful tactic that we continue to invest in.
Yeah, I would argue it's the centerpiece for an omnichannel strategy because it checks the box on the broad-based mass reach television vehicle as well as the more targeted addressable messaging to an engaged user.
So you have CTV on one spectrum. I know short-form video, 6-second video bumper ads, those type of things are very popular as well, or starting to be more popular and being used more. Any read on how those fit into the omni-channel strategy and how they're doing?
Yeah, we're seeing 6 seconds perform really well from a brand lift perspective. Obviously, from a completed view perspective, it's just a shorter view, so you tend to see higher CTRs there. But I think that within an omni-channel strategy, you know, we think about it as another impression that will get you more impact. So it has to be within a larger content play, having a 30, a 15, and a 6, because you can't tell that full story in a 6-second ad, but you can be really focused and intentional within that moment, capturing the consumer's attention. So we see it as a really important facet in the larger omni-channel strategy. So we continue to invest in the 6-second bumper ad, and we're actually pushing a lot of the partners we're working with to find more 6-second inventory even outside of just YouTube. So whether it's in TV or other pre-roll environments, we're continuing to push in those places too.
And do you see, just thinking of that format, do you see, are people purpose building 6-second videos, or are they trying to take a 15-second pre-roll or 30, you know, and break that down? Is that a challenge for you guys?
Yeah. We've been pushing more and more of our clients to tell the creative agencies to brief at a 6-second. Don't brief at a 30. Don't brief at a long form video. Start with the 6 and blow it out that way. Because you can really, again, like focus when you have that 6-second spot. So we're trying to push in that area. I think we continue to see, you know, more cut downs, but, you know, on one of the accounts that I've been working on, we had a 30-second spot, and it delivered huge results within the third-party testing that it had. It was great. So we took that spot and we pushed the creative agency to cut it down into several different units, a 15, a 6, I think even a 10. And we started rotating all of those spots into our video strategy. And right now we're actually testing a sequential journey path to see if we're going to have brand lift on awareness and preference against a journey that's a 30 to a 15 to a 6 and then on. And if there's a lift to that besides just, you know, seeing the ad just in the wild. And I think as we continue to test and learn, even into 2019, we're going to continue to see what other sequences will work for our brand the best.
Cool. So shifting gears slightly, you mentioned audiences and personalization comes to mind, right? So with omni-channel, you know, a true omni-channel strategy, the client, the consumer should be at the center. So how easy or challenging is it to actually do personalization for across the spectrum of formats and devices?
I mean, I'll start, and then I'd be interested in your opinion too. You know, Nielsen, we sit on a lot of data, and you can kind of help personalize and come up with a game plan sitting with the brand. And you know, when we think about all of the channels, you might use different, you know, cuts of the audience at different times, right? So if you're looking at video specifically, maybe, you know, as part of the consumer journey, you're thinking about attracting more people that are about to come into your category or about to enter the purchase cycle to get them to start thinking. So you can be personalized, but be broader in the definition of who you're going after to cast a little bit of a wider net. Yeah. Now, if someone's, you know, entered into the decision cycle, and you know, I'm thinking about the 6 seconds, you might want to be more focused to a certain audience who is already considering, like, and you just need to get them over the last mile, like the last edge. So you start getting into thinking about more direct response type audiences that are fast moving. And so the kinds of conversation that we have, we think of the marketing funnel classically, and if you're driving awareness, do a broad brush, slow moving audience. Right. If you're doing down the purchase funnel and someone's about to make a sale, it's okay to be hyper focused and very direct response in the definition of who you're going after. And it's a matter of just lighting it up in whatever execution channel you're going to run it in. Right.
Yeah, we talk to clients a lot about the classic marketing funnel too. And I think one of the things that has popped up more and more is just thinking about how how to hold each pocket of that funnel accountable for performance. And we've seen a lot of clients thinking about when we think about video and connected TV in particular, maybe moving away from a viewability goal and more toward an offline results goal, because we do have the capability of pulling in offline attribution now. So I bring that up as just something for everyone in the room to think about as a potential way to talk to your own clients. Because there are new and super exciting ways of holding media accountable now that we can do things like measure movement of a consumer from one part of the funnel down to the bottom, and also think about appropriate attribution and measurement from the top of the funnel where you're really just introducing a customer to your brand, to the bottom of the funnel where you're really driving them to purchase something.
For Roku, we kind of believe that the future of television will be streamed. And when the future of TV is streamed, that means that all ads are streamed, and all ads can be targeted, they can be measurable, and they can be interactive. In terms of the personalization and the targeting aspect of things, I think that it's an exciting time in the media business because there's a lot more data practitioners entering the space with behavioral psychology minors, and they can start thinking about who are the swing voters for my client? When you have a fully addressable platform, you often run into CPG clients who might say, well, I sell toothpaste, and what do I need targeting for? Everybody needs to buy toothpaste. But I do think that there are signals now from NCS or other platforms or other data providers that can help identify groups of audience that may be more responsive to an advertiser's ad. So maybe it's brand switchers or shoppers who are more receptive to pricing. And then you can tailor a really specific message to that audience. But the last thing I would say around the interactivity is that, and this kind of plays into sixes. I personally hate sixes, but I understand they have a role. I don't think they have a role in television. But I do think that there's an opportunity now with connected TV to engage those hand raisers in a really meaningful way through interactive ads, through distributing branded content, through T-commerce type experiences where you really can find the right audience through better targeting and try to move them down the funnel in the TV experience, and then actually pass that off to mobile in a meaningful way to keep the conversation going and hopefully lead to greater conversion.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the most exciting things about this space is finding those signals and having some sort of dynamic video creative served to that person. We've been testing out dynamic banners in the past, but how can we take that notion one step further with video? I think we're going to get there. I think we're pretty close, but I think that's one of the most exciting things about this topic in general. And then, to your point, having the multi-touch attribution, helping to push on the measurement perspective of this is really exciting as well.
I love that you guys are calling out the creative piece because you could have the most appropriate targeting ever, and then the creative could be like crap.
So. I'm a product marketer. I used to run targeting and audience products, and same thing. You go through that. But speaking of outcomes and measurement, let's shift gears a little bit, right? I think one of the big challenges is measurement, right? You talk about multi-touch attribution. That's easier said than done. I think theoretically, I remember being at Adweek about 15 years ago and saw a presentation on MTA, and I thought, that is brilliant. But it fell apart as soon as they tried to implement it, right? So we're still working on that. So how do you guys think about of measurement, and how do you think about outcomes, basically, right? Getting people away from click-through rates and those type of metrics that maybe don't actually drive business results.
Yeah, we're known in the industry of measuring reach. We do a great job with Roku of helping people understand that the people that you're reaching and across the landscape. And a lot of what we focus on, though, is outcomes down to a sale. So that comes into our Nielsen Catalina venture. We did an announcement in the auto space to get exclusive access to JD Power purchase data next day, and buying MTA companies like Visual IQ. So we're all in because that's what we're hearing from the marketers and enabling the publishers, is that as addressability increases, that the expectation is talk about metrics that are going to help me make money in my business.
Right.
And that means how many, if I'm a CPG manufacturer, like how many cases of my product got sold.
Yeah.
You know, how many cars drove off the lot. Because it's as simple as that. Now, it's super complex behind the scenes, and there's a lot that goes into it. But if you can't have that very simple conversation, then you're not going to be in the game.
Right.
I think the most important thing to add on to what you just said that's happened with offline measurement is that it's become more real time. So if you're a buyer, you don't have to wait a month to get a report that tells you how many cars were driven off the lot or how many boxes were shipped out. You can actually optimize to those signals during your campaign flight, which is huge.
Yeah, and with OTT now, it's the first time really that advertisers can do that with television. So really looking at what are those outcomes we're trying to influence and try to make adjustments, whether it's to the creative rotations, the sequencing of messaging, the targeting, to really maximize the impact mid-campaign. But I would say, and it's just important to note this, and I kind of brought it up when I first started speaking, like it's a little bit of a double-edged sword because it's turning everything into a direct response type approach. And I still think, and that's how advertisers are actually growing and different in my mind in some cases to the targeting capabilities, because it's just like that's table stakes. But we still need to figure out how to message our audience, how to figure out who are the right people that we need to reach, what to say to them, what's actually going to compel them to become loyal to my brand and drive retention across that audience. And I feel like some of that gets lost because the tech is really strong, and we're able to actually connect the dots across audiences in a way that we really haven't been able to in previous years, and then measure it and actually influence it mid-campaign. So, I think there's also going to need to be some sort of balance around key branding, longevity of brands, and helping to maintain the relationship with consumers over a period of time. What are those KPIs in addition to the real-time signals I can collect to inform how my campaign is performing?
Right. So I'm going to ask a couple more questions, and I see we have some questions coming in, so we'll save some time hopefully for those. So what would be your top two or three piece of advice to someone out here who's thinking about, okay, I like this omni-channel thing, I need to be doing this. What would you tell them?
So I would repeat, connected TV has to be a portion of what you're doing. It's just too fundamentally important, and there's your audience is there. I would also think really deliberately about offline measurement and bringing that into the game. And then the last thing is something that I don't think we've really brought up yet, which is the element of cross-device and incorporating cross-device measurement into an omni-channel strategy for a number of different reasons. But one that I'll quickly point out is the frequency part, because we've been talking so much about the user experience. When you're advertising across so many different screens, you want to make sure that the user experience is positive and you're not oversaturating the user. And so one thing that we talk to clients about a lot when we're consulting with them on omni-channel strategy is most definitely bringing in a cross-device partner to help you connect screens, but also optimize to optimal frequency.
So Stephen, your question was answered there. So that was a question on cross-device, so you nailed that. That's good.
I should elaborate. The one I would add on that, because I agree, that's what we're hearing in the space is, and I love the comment you made earlier around, if you think about how the audiences are different in each, say, journey stage, you think about, I'm going after my omni-channel, but yet each medium might have a different play in the experience, that you keep the accountability for each kind of portion different. Right? Ultimately, you are driving sales, but if connected TV or linear TV is meant to expand your category, then you compare those at that stage against each other. Like people who are about to enter my category, how am I doing with that? It may not be, people who are driving off my lot at a car sale, but it's equally important because if you're not expanding your category, then you're just shrinking and talking to the same audience.
Right.
Well, and not everyone might be in your category at that moment in time,
Right.
but when they are, they'll know your brand and you're that much closer. So yeah, it always goes back to what's the role of that channel, what's the objective overall. I agree.
Yep, for me, it's just, we're in a consumer-centric business. We didn't even cover off on the privacy concerns associated with what we're doing here. That's time for a whole other panel. But so because Kathleen already talked about the benefits of OTT and connected TV in the broader omni-channel approach, I would just, remind people to not be creepy. This is, we can listen to what people are watching. We can, create watermarks to understand the video that's airing across their television screens, and we can retarget them instantaneously. But that doesn't mean that we should. I think we need to just be respectful of our customers, our audiences, and think about what are intelligent ways to message them and to build brands around them and engage them and get them to be really, again, build loyalty in a way that can be done across all these different touch points, as opposed to some of the sneaky ways that you can get around doing this.
And the only thing I'll add is you have to start with all of the teams. I think you mentioned this earlier. It comes down to client, media agency, creative agency, and any other tech partners or media partners that you're working with. Everyone has to come together in order to build this strategy. Yep. The media agency can't do it alone. The client can't do it alone. Everyone has to come together and understand what the objective is, what the strategy is, and what the role of all of those channels are. So everybody working together is really important.
Excellent. So let me ask, I'll go to some of the questions from the audience, and then I've got one final question for everyone. So can you elaborate on the offline or addressability portions, thoughts on closed loop attribution systems? We talked a little bit about some offline metrics, but anything about closed loop attribution systems or?
I think where clients are finding the brand teams and the media agencies and the creative agencies are finding the most fun is like when they are able to define an audience. They go through the exercise of bringing all the teams together. In reality, it's like every 6 months, I get 40 people in a room and they just hash through the strategy, and coming out of it, it's like it's the shared suffering of a full day workshop to figure out what's the brand strategy going to be. But coming out of that as clear definitions and clear objectives around who I want to go after. Yeah. And I find that in this notion of now things can be measured, that the reward of seeing these ideas spark, and it could be a junior planner coming up with an idea, seeing it in action, and then seeing the results of, did it drive sales? Mm-hmm. Did it work? Did it not work? Okay, it did. Pat on the back, great job, let's do more of that. It didn't work, okay, let's try something else. That's where I think that it's the most fun. When the brands get together, it's hard. It's a lot of coordination, but people seem to really dig it.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, one final question from the audience: how can a brand quickly scale across video content without disrupting the viewer experience? Are there any scalable digital solutions for brand integrations? So, does that go back to the one size fits all? Probably, maybe not. Maybe more of a custom, but I'll throw that out there.
I can at least talk for Roku. I think, as I mentioned, we're really thinking about how to move beyond a traditional 15-second or 30-second ad to reach audiences, and we do that today through sponsorships, through branded integrations, et cetera, across the platform. And we're not an IP owner. We don't produce content, but we do feel that at least the TV experience is a great place to distribute that content and create really meaningful, engaging experiences surrounding that content through microsites and interactive ads that we can do, both in content and around ads. So, I don't know that there's an answer necessarily, at least for scalable beyond at least OTT, but I do think that there's a great opportunity within OTT to rethink a brand strategy around creating a more unique experience for consumers that's on the premium HD 55-inch 4K TV. It's a great opportunity to really get your brand message out there.
Okay. So we've just got a little over a minute left, so one final question. So this time next year, will we be how will we be talking about omni-channel video strategies? And or will there be some other trend that's going to come up within the video space that is going to be, more exciting, more important?
I think we'll still be talking about it.
Yep.
I think there's still some work that needs to get done as where it comes to measurement, comes to bringing all of your channels together. I know a lot of accounts and clients are still working in that multi-channel strategy. So I think we're still going to be talking about it, but hopefully we'll have some more learnings and some more dimension around it.
Perfect.
Yeah, I agree. I think we'll still be talking about it, but I think we're going to be back here talking about a lot more specific case studies
Yeah.
Good.
for how brands have actually seen real business results as a result of omni-channel strategies.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think we're in the thick of it, of the buzz around being able to light up all these channels, and there's a lot to work out.
Yep.
And so I think, this year and maybe even next year, I don't know if, we're in like this seismic shift of addressability right now. Yet people are still consuming a lot of 6 hours of video each day in the US. So, brands need to figure out, okay, where are those eyeballs going for the consumers that I'm going to go reach, and how to orchestrate that across multiple channels. And it's going to be hard. I think we already have some case studies and stuff, I think, but hopefully hear more.
Yeah.
There's a lot of work to be done. So I don't expect anything new and different come next year.
Excellent. Good. Perfect. So there you go. Next year, lots of work to do with Omnichannel. So everybody go out, dig in. Thank you very much. Please thank my panels, and thank you for coming.